Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Pets and Vets First Only, working dogs before, during, and after service. I'm your host, Justin Locke, 12-year Army veteran with a little bit of combat experience with working dogs. However, I'm no expert, and so we decided to bring in some experts with us. Today we have both Alex Schnell, a 8-year Army U.S. Marine Corps veteran who has the job of being a multi-purpose canine handler. And then we have also Jessica Harris, who is the founder of Canine Salute, also a Army veteran as well within a combat medic role. We're first going to start and kick it over to you guys for some additional introduction pieces, and then also go into how you began your work with working dogs. So Alex, if you want to kick us off?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here. My name is Alex Schnell. I was in the U.S. Marine Corps in 2012 is when I enlisted. 2019 is when I separated. During my career, I was fortunate enough to be able to serve as a military working dog handler, and that began in 2013. During the last 6.5 years of my career, I served 3 combat deployments overseas with my multi-purpose canine bass. One to Iraq, one to Somalia, and one to Afghanistan. And since separation in 2019, I've also been fortunate enough to stay in the realm of working dogs, and I've worked for the Department of Defense and Department of Homeland Security since separating.
Excellent. Thanks for being here, Alex. Jessica, same question. If you have any additional pieces on your introduction, and then how did you begin your work with the working dogs?
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jessica Harris, and I'm the founder of Canine Salute, which is a dog treat company that honors and gives back to working dogs in law enforcement and the military. I am a retired veteran of the Washington Army National Guard, where I served for 20 years as a combat medic from 1995 until retiring in 2015. During that time, about the last 9 years or so of my career, I served in an active duty status with the National Guard for our state's counter-drug task force. And during that time, I had multiple jobs there with the counter-drug program. And probably the most fun I had there was definitely doing medical support for law enforcement agencies. And so it was during that time that I got to really see canines in action and what working dogs do and how much of an asset they are to our mission. And so it was about a year after I retired is when I started Canine Salute, which I think we'll get into a little later.
Yes. Thanks, Jessica. Thank you both for being here with us today. So let's dive right in. Let's start with the dynamic between a handler and their dog. This is very complex. It's unique to each situation, each mission, or even each person themselves. So Alex, can you describe kind of how that dynamic looks on your end from a military standpoint, either the training, actual missions, and then afterwards?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anyone that's ever owned a dog knows the bond that is formed between human and dog, but then it is just exponentially increased when that dog and your relationship is potentially going to save lives. And so the dogs in the military are obviously more than just equipment, but they depend on you for their livelihood, their training, and life outside of their kennel. And then yourself as the handler, I mean, you depend on that dog for everything, for survival. And so the insane bond and trust that comes through that bond is just kind of undescribable. And you're with each other constantly. I mean, with my personal experience, the 6.5 years that I was serving with my multi-purpose canine, I want to say in that time, we maybe spent about 7 to 8 days apart from each other at the longest. And so they're with you constantly. You get to know every single detail about their personality, their capabilities, their limitations, and they get to know everything about you as well. And so you are completely a team, and it's no longer an individual basis. So it's a very special bond, to say the least. And it's a very rewarding job and experience.
Yes, excellent. Jessica, from your standpoint, where you got to observe from outside the aspect, how was that dynamic between a handler and a dog, and then ultimately the mission that you were trying to accomplish?
So really just to echo what Alex said is, these canines and the handlers, they rely so much on each other to say, to save each other's lives ultimately, or, any one of the team. And so having a bond with an animal where that dog or that animal is willing to put their life down on the line with no hesitation for their human, it just really creates a bond that is hard to find elsewhere. And so, and for kind of an outsider looking, in and working alongside canine handler teams, just really seeing that special dynamic, the amount of work and trust that goes into building that relationship over the years, and really being able to see just how much of an important asset those canines are to any team.
Yeah. Alex, there's got to be a lot of training involved with getting a dog up to speed on being a certified working dog, I'm sure. You can't just take any dog and call them certified. So can you go into the training aspects behind what makes a dog a certified working dog?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing about a working dog in any respect, no matter what they're trained to do, is the training never stops. The training is constant from like the day that they're purchased from that agency organization until the day they're retired. But during that initial purpose, the length and intensity of the training kind of depends on the job that they're going to be serving. So you have your single, your dual, and your multi-purpose canines. And the single purpose are more like your tracking dogs, or maybe they just smell for bombs or drugs. And then you get into your dual purpose, which have the bite capability along with the substance detection using their nose. And then you get into the next step, which is multi-purpose canines. And that's where the dog can kind of do a little bit of everything, where they can track people, they can find bombs or drugs, and they have that apprehension or bite capability. And you're looking at anywhere from, the initial training when they're at doggy boot camp is about 3 months, to maybe 5 months long. But then when they get paired up with that handler that's going to be assigned to them, that training kind of starts over again. And like I said, it's continuous, but you're probably looking at another 3 to 6 month window before that team is operational. So before the dog can even do their job with their handler, it's about 6 months to a year, depending on the organization and the task that they're training to do.
Is that also dependent upon the dog themselves? So you mentioned that within the training, it could be 3 to 6 weeks long, 3 to 8 weeks long. Is that just dependent upon the task, how quickly the dog picks that up?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the dog's inherent abilities and drives and instincts definitely play a part in that. Most organizations, at least for the military side, have kind of a program in place so that the dogs will go through a set amount of days regardless of their skill. But yes, having a dog with an aptitude to learning and pick things up definitely makes the process quicker and easier.
Okay. And so what does a typical day look like, Alex, for both the handler and the working dog on a military standpoint?
So after you get paired up with that dog, your job is to prepare for your mission, regardless if that's, doing base security over here in the United States, or if that's an overseas deployment. Your mission's kind of going to dictate your daily routine, but the day usually starts off, that individual handler is responsible for the care of that dog. So feeding and medicating that dog, doing the health checks, making sure that you're doing their physical workout programs to make sure that they're in shape for that mission. And then, hey, it could, go from a simple substance detection problem to we're going to be jumping out of helicopters and swimming in the ocean and preparing for all kinds of craziness that we're going to do overseas, And so that dog's daily routine can drastically change, which is great for them because it prepares them for all kinds of experiences and environments and situations. But it's usually a sun up to sundown, sometimes even during the evening to work your nighttime exposure. And then once again, your evening feeds and wrapping up with some records and administrative work. But that dog is usually on that assigned owner's at the assigned owner's side doing training from sun up to sundown.
And then how does that work with downtime necessarily for the dog? Are you running them sun up to sundown consistently, or do they have some downtime periods in there?
So at the initial stages of training, most of the training that they're going to do are like short segments. You're teaching them a specific skill. You're building their stamina mentally and physically as you go. And then once you're assigned to a handler and you're working more towards operational, it is that sun up to sundown, you're doing something, whether it is obedience or just laying by the handler as they do administrative work and working on that, impulse control and obedience in that scenario. Then we're going to go up and do substance detection scenario that our trainer set up. So in one respect or another, the dog is constantly and continuously training, even if it's not go, 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 an active drill, it's still something that can transfer over to that deployment and to utilization.
Excellent. Well, both of you are veterans, so thank you very much for your service. I wanted to talk about how that transition went from leaving service and then how your working dogs or working with working dogs helped and aided in that transition. Jessica, do you want to start?
Sure. So I've always been just a huge dog lover from, as long as I can remember. And having the opportunity to work with canine, or on the outside looking in onto canine handler teams, that's where I just really developed an extra appreciation and love specifically for working dogs and really seeing what their capabilities are. So as I was transitioning out of the military, I knew I wanted to do something within the dog world or the pet industry in some way. And I was actually working on another business idea that still had to do with dogs. And so when I left the military, I went through the entrepreneurship track that you can go through. And so that really helped just give me my initial kind of business skills that, I didn't have prior, and helped me kind of formulate a plan of what I wanted to do. And so for me, it just made sense to find some type of business where I could still give back so much to the community that I love and the community that I had spent 2 decades with, with military, law enforcement, canines. And so it just all fell into place, and Canine Salute was born a year after I left the service, and we're still going.
Well, excellent. Thank you for your service. And I'm glad that transition period went so well with you, moving from a service member into a vetrepreneur, those who find their next mission in life by taking on a business venture. So thank you for that. Alex, how was your transition getting out of the Marine Corps after 8 years, multiple combat deployments? How was that piece for you?
The transition for veterans, sometimes can be a little bit of a struggle. Mine was definitely blessed because I was able to retire my military working dog Bass that I did those overseas deployments with for 6.5 years. And I got to take him home the same week that I separated, which definitely made the transition easier, because some of the hardest part of that transition is kind of getting isolated from that community and the brotherhood or sisterhood of your service members. And so getting your buddy to come home with you that you've been with for such a long time definitely kind of eases that learning curve a little bit. And then I was fortunate enough to get into the entrepreneurship route and the nonprofit route through US War Dogs, where I'm able to give back to that community. So I'm still kind of feel like I'm connected to the mission and to the dog handlers and dog teams that are still out there fighting the good fight. So that has definitely helped me personally kind of keep one foot in, one foot out, and helped my transition through.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into US War Dogs here in a little bit.
Yeah.
But I also wanted to talk on the transition of your animal as well. So it's not just the service member that's leaving their service, it's the service working dog as well. How did that transition piece go for him, and kind of where do you still use some of your training tactics to keep his mind up and going?
Yeah, absolutely. And so there was a congressional law called the Robbie's Law that was passed in 2000, and that made it an actual option for handlers to adopt out military working dogs. And before that, they would be used until they weren't able to physically do the task anymore, and then they most of the time would get euthanized. And that's obviously, no one wants to see that. But thankfully, for the last 22 years, it has saved and prolonged, probably thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of military working dogs But for Bass, in my specific journey, when I brought him home, he adapted very easily to that camp couch life where he just kind of hangs out. He gets his walks. We still get to do the fun drills where we're doing directional training and obedience, and he gets to bite the fake arm training tool and stuff, but he doesn't have to go through the long nights with, gunfire and explosions and all the stuff that no one wants to do. And so he had no issue adjusting to the new lifestyle, but it is also great because I've been able with him to kind of use him to educate civilians and the local community. I take him to elementary schools and middle schools, and we do like demos for Veterans Days and stuff. So it's cool to be able to use his story to educate the public on the sacrifices and the service that these dogs do on a daily basis, and how many lives they've saved and stuff like that. So he's still pretty active in the community, which is always fun.
Yeah, excellent. We're going to get into that a little bit, but I also wanted to talk about both of your transitions, the animals themselves, and kind of how you would like others to view that transition. Is there anything you wish they understood, whether that be a civilian or a veteran themselves, and kind of dive into what you guys are doing now, all these great organizations that you're working with. Feel free to talk about that. Jessica?
Sure. So for me, it just, it really went back to, finding purpose again. And I think, that's where a lot of veterans can struggle as they transition out of the service. And so, it's important for the civilian community to know that, there's more to us than just what we did in our military service. And it's also really important for veterans to realize that there is life after the military. And that was just one blip, in our life. And while it was an important thing that we did, and it, developed who we are as a person, oftentimes, that there's still more great things out there to do. And so that's really where Canine Salute has afforded me the opportunity, like Alex, to stay connected within that community of people that we're just used to being around, and the communities that we care about. And so, having Canine Salute has just given me that purpose, outside of the military, and since I've transitioned out. And it's, it has also led to just meeting so many other great veterans around the country that I normally wouldn't have had the opportunity to do so. I've had a lot of really wonderful opportunities since starting the business, and have just met incredible veterans across the country just doing really wonderful work. And so one thing that I love too about the veteran community, and specifically veterans that go into business or they have nonprofits, is it's such a collaborative community for the most part. And I feel like we're not always trying to necessarily compete with each other, and it's just about lifting each other up. And it's really easy to work with like-minded veterans or organizations that are on a similar mission. And just the more that we work together and, power through things together, we can continue to create just positive changes for our communities, and still for our country once we no longer wear the uniform.
Yeah, excellent. I love that you said it's a community and it's always collaborative. The connections are so, infinite. Even with our president and CEO here right at the National Veterans Memorial Museum, Lieutenant General Michael Farrader says that he's met you over in Fort Lewis in Washington back in 2016. So it's always a matter of who you guys can get connected with and stay connected with long after your service ends. So Alex,
Yep.
Kind of same question. Is there anything else you want to talk about for your service, your transitional piece? And then if you want to start talking about U.S. War Dogs and what you're doing now.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jessica brought up a ton of good points about my work through this nonprofit. Actually began when I was still on active duty, because I benefited from United States War Dog as just a regular Marine dog handler when I was overseas, receiving care packages from them, some gear that I needed for my dog. And I was like, man, this is awesome. And now I was afforded the opportunity to actually join this organization and kind of give back. And aside from the actual mission and providing that support to people that are retired military working dogs and still active duty that I'll talk about in a second. Just getting the chance to meet other people and go to different events. And even if it's a fundraising event, meeting those real people that are still in the community, maybe going through their individual struggles and networking has been worth it just in that sense. But then as far as the mission that United States War Dog does, that is a mission that kind of just makes you feel rewarded every single day. And what the primary mission that United States War Dogs does is supports those dogs after their service. So like my military working dog Bass, after retirement, the medical care kind of ends as far as what the government provides for them. And he was 7 years old when he was retired, so he has a lot of good years left. And that medical costs fall on the individual that adopts them. And sometimes that can get pretty expensive. And you have to oftentimes choose between, am I going to provide the best care for this dog, or am I going to, have to feed my family and take care of my kids? And our mission is to take that financial burden away from that owner. And so we provide, prescription drug costs, surgery costs, and any equipment or support they need through those financial stresses. We take that away from the owner and provide all that stuff for them. So we have about 2,000 dogs on our prescription care program that we pay for those prescription meds every single month. And it just allows the owner to kind of not stress about that, give them the best support that they need, and hopefully improve their quality of life for as long as possible. And that is a very rewarding experience. And I've been able to meet a lot of great people and organizations along the way.
Excellent. So you mentioned that you received some care packages while you were deployed. Can you go into what type of things that you'll receive if you're part of that organization of U.S. War Dogs, and what they do for current and serving individuals and their working dogs?
Yeah, absolutely. So the military is pretty good at providing the equipment that you need to do your job overseas and stateside. So they give you a lot of good equipment. However, just with any big organization, or when you're doing that specific job, you might need certain gear that doesn't get approved for the request, or specialized equipment that's too expensive, whatever the case is. So a great example is one of my friends and the president of U.S. War Dogs. He deployed with 35 dog teams over to Afghanistan back in, I think it was 2012. And he needed these specific leather tracking leashes in order to do the job the best that they could. And they're in a real world combat environment. And going through just kind of the big supply chain takes a long time. You may not get the approval process, whatever the case is. So U.S. War Dogs was able to send them out 15 of those specific tracking leashes they need, and they're able to use them within a couple of weeks. And so we provide, extra specialized equipment that individuals may need and request, as well as just a general care package that includes feel good stuff for the owners, dog toys, and then all your specialized equipment that you might need too. So it's a little bit of everything.
No, it's great. I love that you can have some downtime with the toys and stuff,
Yeah.
but making sure that your dog and yourself have the necessary equipment in order to accomplish that mission at hand. So switching now gears to a little bit of misconceptions and myths and everything like that. What type of rumors have you guys noticed around the working dog community, both on a military standpoint or a civilian capacity, that just aren't true? Jessica, do you have anything to add on that?
Gosh, there's probably a handful of misconceptions, but, one that I would say, really comes to mind is that a lot of times, people don't like the presence of a dog in whatever type of situation. They think it's a little maybe too aggressive in certain situations. And actually unfortunately, there's a lot of people that would like to see these canines removed, for certain scenarios. And really it couldn't be, further from the truth, where having that canine, really just that mere presence of a working dog will de-escalate a situation. And really it can be more of a tool to cause less physical violence and harm to whether it's police officers, service members, just other people in that situation. And so it's always important when you have these dogs that are going to community events, just like Alex still uses his dog to educate the public. The same, you see that especially within the law enforcement community, where those public events are so important to get the people out, get the community out, and to really see what the purpose of these dogs and why they're so important to our military and to law enforcement, and just to kind of get rid of some of those really negative stereotypes that these dogs are just out to do as much physical harm as possible, when that's really not the case at all.
Yeah, that's a great point. Alex, do you have anything to add?
Kind of on the opposite side of the spectrum. Sometimes you have owners, regular civilian that will see a dog and they're a huge dog lover, and so they want to come up and love that dog, or they feel like you're punishing that dog because when your relationship with that military dog is not like a house pet. Like, you need to be very businesslike with them. They get tons of joy and pleasure out of doing that task, doing that job they're provided or trained on, and then getting that ultimate reward, like the ball at the end, and interacting with myself and him, right? And so they're kind of taught at a young age to kind of ignore everything around them. But sometimes you'll be working a dog and people will want to go up and pet that dog, which can be distracting, or they'll kind of, give you some snide remarks for, working that dog too hard, or that dog's hot and needs water and stuff like that. And I just always like to take that opportunity to explain to owners, like, hey, these dogs are not your typical house pet. These guys are machines that are bred to be pushed to the physical limits and do such an amazing, incredible job. And they're so resilient. That is why we use them. And so it's pretty cool once you understand the capabilities and limitations, like how far these dogs are actually able to be pushed and how much they actually enjoy that. And they're so much more capable than most of the public actually understand. And that's the fun part, is to get to educate them on what the actual limits are and how far you can push them, and how many lives that ends up saving in the end.
So Alex, can you educate us? If I'm walking around and I see you with your working dog, how can I interact? How can I approach? Is there anything I should be doing, shouldn't be doing?
Well, at the very least, ask whoever's holding the other end of the leash, communicate that, because it'll depend on, is that dog team currently working? Are they currently searching for something? Or are they just traveling through, let's just say, an airport or something like that? So it's always better just to ask whoever's holding the leash and kind of respect their wishes, regardless of what that is, whether you can pet them in that moment or no, thank you. And then just understanding, if they say no, thank you, there's probably a bigger reason for that, other than they just don't like you. Like, I promise you, it's not that. It's probably they're doing it for the benefit of the dog.
Yeah, of course. So Jessica, you've been in the canine and working dog realm for quite a long time now. What changes have you noticed throughout the years and currently that have made the community better, or even some changes that you could see on the horizon?
So I would say it just really goes back to public awareness. That has just changed so much. A lot of it, really stems even just social media. So you see on social media dog handlers that, their dog has their own page, basically. And so it really is, it's a lot of fun, because you get to see what these dogs are doing on a daily basis. You get to see sometimes when they, if they apprehend a bad guy or whatever the situation is. So you get to see the working part of them. And then also just, the fun part. They're a dog and they want to have fun. But they also have a job to do. And so with that awareness, what's been really great is many departments. So unlike the military, where, a lot of the things are funded for them, what we see in the law enforcement community is, once the dog is purchased, which is usually, sometimes that's within a budget of a police department, and even sometimes that isn't, and that comes from a donation from a nonprofit organization, or the community raising funds for that. And so unfortunately, the issue still is the care for that dog. That generally comes out of the pocket of the dog handler. And so through this awareness that we've seen in the last, I'd say 10, 20 years, is that the community is willing to rally behind these dogs, that's within their communities or for our military working dogs. And so when dogs need protective vests and medical equipment, medical care, things like that, through fundraisers, whether it's through all the really great nonprofits doing great work, the community is so willing to give back and to help that canine handler and ultimately just help that dog. So I think that's what has been really great. And through that, so many great nonprofits have, popped up in the last decade or so, because, there's tens of thousands of working dogs out there that need our support through law enforcement, military, search and rescue dogs, veterans that need service dogs. I mean, it's really endless. And so the opportunity is there for people if they want to support these great animals. And there's just a lot of great organizations. And so, and same with, that's why, with my company, Canine Salute, is I want to also help, although I'm a for-profit, I still want to help these nonprofits with their mission as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is attributed to the awareness that we are being able to spread throughout the community, which is great. We have a lot of these nonprofits popping up and then for-profits that are giving back to the community at large. Alex, with your experience on the Marine Corps side of training a working dog to utilizing working dog and then after service, how has that changed throughout the years, and kind of what do you see on the horizon?
Yeah, throughout the last 20 years, with the global war on terror, the use and need for dogs has exponentially increased, starting from 2001, and that capability was the best tool to keep people safe for the greatest threat, which are those improvised explosive devices overseas. And now that is kind of calming down a little bit and we're shifting focus away from that, you see a lot of the military working dog programs kind of downsizing, going back to how they were pre 9/11. And that's just kind of the ebb and flow of the military cycle. But one thing that we're really proud of at like U.S. War Dogs is gathering stories and making sure that the sacrifices, the service, the just amazing stories that has happened over the last 20 years stay preserved and stay relevant for the next generation. Because if we know anything, the cycle will probably repeat itself. And when everything starts up again and they need these dogs back, like, we just want those stories and those men and women and those dogs especially to be remembered. And so as the cycle continues, we need to focus more on supporting retired and discharged working dogs, but then there will be a time where we need to shift that focus back to supporting our active duty dog teams as well. So it just kind of changes, and the good thing is the community grows and those stories never go away.
Yeah, I love that. We have the stories that we try and tell here at the museum, but that also extends to their working dogs as well. Looks like we've got Joe Worley joining us. Joe, thanks for joining. Quick background on Joe. He's a U.S. Navy corpsman, served with the 2nd Battalion, 1st Marines back in 2004, where he sustained some injuries and then began his journey into the working animal environment. Joe, thanks for being here. Do you have any pieces you want to touch upon for your introduction?
No, I'd like to apologize for being late. I won't make an excuse other than to say I'm very, very sorry for that. I've been having prosthetic issues and stairs have been a bit of an issue. And so I did a bit of a roll and tumble. I'm good. Just needed a moment. Having said that, I absolutely love working dogs in general, and I'm so sorry for jumping in late in the middle of a conversation here, but I do want to say that the programs that support working dogs in general are things that I think are great transitions from military into civilian life, because they give us an opportunity to still serve. And I think that when we get out, there's such a gap in our lives, and we want to be a part of something big. I think that's one reason why so many people feel so empty when they leave. And so getting involved was a natural transition for me, and I think it was a very sneaky way to get some therapy in, by just process of being involved in something like that.
No, yeah, definitely. I definitely get the therapeutic part of having that animal there, and that transitional piece. It always helps make things easier having someone to confide in. Um, Joe, since we had a lot of conversations so far on the military working dog side of it, would you mind discussing how you came into the community of utilizing working dogs, and then on the civilian capacity, what your dogs may be used for, or how they may interact with the public?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me personally, I was injured in Iraq 2004, like you mentioned, and I actually went on a ski trip and was invited to and ended up seeing one of the facility dogs for Walter Reed, chocolate lab by the name of Deuce, which is just a fantastic name for a chocolate lab if you're immature like I am. And we I got to see the dog act like a normal dog, and then he said, Deuce, come, and the dog's entire demeanor changed. And I'll be honest, I put my initial application in for America's Vet Dogs for all the wrong reasons. I just wanted a really well-trained dog. I did see the benefits, but I didn't recognize the difference that it would make. And so in 2008, I was in the first on-campus class with America's Vet Dogs, and I immediately fell in love with the program. I immediately started seeing the benefits, not just of a dog that can help mitigate a physical disability, like me, my left leg is above knee amputation, and my right leg ended up having a couple of dozen surgeries on. And I immediately saw the benefits of having the dog there and not having to ask, because as military members and as very independent people in general, it's hard to ask for help. And so going from a military to a civilian standpoint on one hand, and then also going from being the guy that everybody comes to for help as a medic, I was a corpsman with Marines, to all of a sudden I need everything, all the help in the world. I can't even go to the restroom without somebody helping me. It's very humbling. And so being able to have a bridge between where I was and where I am, to have something that helps mitigate a physical disability like mine, and then also having a bridge between people like me who have a military experience and civilians out there who don't have the same experience as me. A lot of people love dogs, and so actually these dogs in a lot of ways are ambassadors between us and regular people. It makes me feel involved in society. And so with us, these dogs are of course mitigating a physical disability, also playing a part in our mental health in ways that we don't even begin to understand. In a lot of ways we see the effects without really realizing what's happening, and it's helped me be a part of civilian life again in a lot of ways. And we have a lot of people that volunteer, a lot of civilians that volunteer that are involved in the program, because there's people that want to make a difference, but we want to spend our time. Our time is important. We want to spend our time doing something that makes a difference. And so nonprofits that take care of veterans is a great way for veterans and civilians to get involved. There's a lot of civilian impact with I think what we do. Not to mention, I initially got involved in 2008 with volunteer work, a little bit of public speaking, because I didn't want that 2-year gap like I had between, where I got hurt and when I got help. Because I didn't know this program existed. I didn't know, there were not a lot of vet dogs or war dogs or anything out there doing what we do now. But there's a need, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I love that. There's so much of an aspect where you want to reach out and find that help, but you just don't know how or where. So I appreciate you kind of sharing your story on that. Would you mind diving in, though, on what America's Vet Dogs is? What do you guys do over there?
Sure. So what we do is we train service dogs for veterans and first responders. We don't charge the veterans anything. All the dogs are custom chosen and custom trained, which actually plays a bigger part than you would think in a lot of ways. It's very important, the matching. You may think you want something. Like I initially went in wanting a chocolate lab because of Deuce, and ended up with a golden retriever, which is about as far from a chocolate lab as you can get. And let me tell you, Benjamin was a part of the family. He was perfectly chosen for my family. I had young kids, and he's so gentle. My favorite thing is him being able to run around in the yard with the kids the way that I couldn't, and they'd play a little game where they'd run around the little treehouse thing, and but what we do is we use the dogs to primarily initially to mitigate physical disability. So we have dogs that are trained for nightmare interruption and TBI and seizure response, which are things we didn't initially know how to do. But also initially we were there to help mitigate physical disabilities like amputations, balance issues. So there's a lot of retrieval, a lot of balance and mobility, stair work, opening. Now we also now have dogs that'll open handicap doors. They can hit the button with their nose, and they love it because they get treats out of it. But they can actually pull you in a wheelchair. They can open handicap doors with a little hook that you can hook on the door that easily goes on and off. And these are all things that you think might not be necessary until you use them. I was rescheduling a flight in Hartsfield, and if you've ever been to Hartsfield, the airport is just unnecessary. That's the best word I have for it. And you can actually, it's such a big airport, and I was having to sort of have him pull me along the walkway while I was trying to reschedule a flight on my phone. It was just one of those moments where I was very thankful for some of the new training that we do. But we train service dogs for veterans and first responders. We don't charge them. We have a 2-week on-campus training course. There's lifetime care, follow-up care. Since we're dual certified with ADI and with Assistance Dogs International and with the Guide Dogs International as well, we have to recertify, and so there's definitely backup care and retraining as necessary. If I were to lose hearing or sight, or God forbid the walking get worse somehow, they would come out and make sure that I have the tools I need to succeed. Because that's the overall goal with what we do. We want veterans and people to be able to function in society and be better.
No, that's great. So many tasks and roles that these dogs can play. It seems like your list kept going on and on and on of tasks and things that they can aid with for their handler. So that's great. And we encourage
it's been a slow build, though. We didn't start out with all this stuff. It's just, as the program grew, we started growing with it.
Yeah, definitely. So you guys all talked about some great organizations, but how do people get in contact with them? How can they get involved? And then what kind of things can they get out of it? Jessica, do you want to start?
Sure. So if you have a dog, or if you have friends that are dog lovers, then I encourage you to get Canine Salute treats, of course. And you can find our treats at caninesalute.com. We're also adding some fun things for humans as well, but primarily the focus is on treats. And so something I didn't mention earlier too is on every bag of treats, you'll find a tribute to a canine that's been killed in the line of duty. And so that's a really special aspect of what I do. And so besides purchasing treats, or when you do purchase treats, just know that 10% of your purchase will go to a canine organization that helps fund protective vests, medical equipment, any care that a dog needs. And then also we do a lot of donations. So generally in the summer, and then of course with the holidays coming up, we'll either partner with other organizations that are already sending care packages, and we'll donate treats throughout the year to deployed military working dog teams. And then another way is if you are a dog handler, if you're listening to this and you're a dog handler, or someone that is, and they have lost their canine in the line of duty, we're always looking for stories to tell, just like U.S. War Dogs wants to keep those stories going. And that's kind of, part of the mission too at Canine Salute, with continuing to have those stories, as small as it might be, just on a package of treats for just the general public to see. So, and again, that's caninesalute.com.
No, I love that you guys are continuing to tell the story. Alex, you tell a similar story over at U.S. War Dogs. Would you mind telling folks here, how do they get involved? How can they benefit or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the best way to get involved and learn more about our organization is through our website, uswardogs.org. And if you go to there, you can, request support, learn more about all of our missions, see all of our support programs we have, and then check out more of our staff. Another cool thing is if you subscribe to our newsletter, we're always sending that out to kind of keep our community and our donors involved, letting them know what events we have coming up, and how their donations are going directly to the actual war dog programs. And that's the cool thing, is we're made up of all volunteers, all military or working dog community members. And so every dollar that gets donated goes directly back into the mission, which is pretty special. And we're always posting cool stuff on social media too, to kind of give our audience that look into the actual working dogs' lives, and kind of show the training side of things, the operational side of things, and give them more awareness as to what these dogs are continuing to do for us, like right now, while they're still in service.
Excellent. Yeah. Joe, do you want to cap us off there with how do people get involved or get in contact with the organization?
Yeah, absolutely. First, I want to say thank you to you guys for continuing to serve. I mean, it honestly, it means a lot to me. When I got involved, I didn't realize how much it was going to mean to me in the long run, until I sort of looked back and realized that in a lot of ways it was healing for me. So thank you guys for what you do. But if you want to know more about America's Vet Dogs, you can go to vetdogs.org. There are both opportunities to volunteer for weekend puppy raisers, or if you want to go to jail, you can go to jail and do some of our puppy raising in the prison system there. I would not recommend that method of volunteering. Having said that, though, there's also, you can go there and donate as well. We don't charge the veterans anything. Like these guys, we're in it to help people. Our heart is here. We're not, nobody gets involved in this kind of stuff to have, to buy the top of the line Cybertruck. We're just doing things that mean something to us. And so, you can go to vetdogs.org to find out more.
Excellent. Well, hey, thank you very much, Jessica, Alex, and Joe, for being here and talking working dogs with us. But I do want to open up the floor here for any questions, whether you're online joining us or in the room here. Does anyone have any questions for our panel about working dogs in general?
My question is, do they only use certain breeds and certain breeders, or is it, do they ever use the opportunity to use rescue dogs?
Sure. So the question is, do you guys have specific breeds, or is it kind of open? And what type of breeders do you guys utilize? How are these dogs indoctrinated into being a working dog? Open the floor to whoever wants to jump in and field the question.
I'll jump in. The dogs have to file an application online. I'm just joking. So we have our own breeding program. And so that's how our dogs come in. And for us, it's because, you get into a larger nonprofit. It helps if we stick with breeds that have good, healthy, long working lives. And so, Goldens, Germans, poodles, if it's necessary, not so much for service dogs, but in the guide dog side of things, for people to have a dog that's a little more hypoallergenic. And so that's how we personally do it. It's labs, Goldens, poodles, and mixes of those for us. And the dogs don't have to go online and fill an application out.
Well, that's probably smart there. Alex, it looked like you were going to chime in.
Yeah, I was just going to say, for like the working dog side, it's all about breed and temperament, and it kind of, once again, dictates what that dog's going to be selected for. A lot of the dogs do come from overseas in the military, like in Europe. We'll go overseas and buy dogs from breeders over there. But there are a lot more American breeders that are coming up now. And so it really, it could be Labradors, Belgian Mals, German Shepherds, Dutch Shepherds, GSPs, anything with a good nose and good temperament, if they're looking for that like apprehension or bite capability. But yeah, the temperament and those testing that they do for is really like the key that they're looking for those dogs.
Excellent. Is there any other questions?
Yeah. So my uncle was a contractor over in Iraq with a dog. Okay, so he was the civilian side, I guess. And I'm wondering if U.S. War Dogs supports those dogs that were contractors, that weren't connected with the military. If they're contractors.
Yeah. So the question is, oh, did you guys hear it?
I did, yeah. Currently, right now, we are only supporting like military working dogs, and we would love to maybe eventually expand that mission. But there's right now, obviously, like financial constraints. We're just focusing on the military working dogs. But I think there are some nonprofits that do support contract working dogs, but I don't know any off the top of my head.
Yeah, Jessica, you mentioned you guys take in stories. Do you take in contractor sizes stories as well?
I haven't in the past, and that really probably is one group of people that kind of maybe gets forgotten or a little bit lost in the mix, that we don't always think of. But with as much as contractors are used, overseas, then that's certainly an area that could be focused on a lot more.
Well, thank you. Any other questions? All right, looks like none heard. So, hey, I appreciate all three of you joining us for being the panelists on our segment here, Working Dogs Before, During, and After Service. Thank you so much for your service and continued service working with these great working dogs in the community at large. For everyone at home, thanks for tuning in. We have Pets and Vets running now through Saturday, October 22nd, with a large jam-packed schedule. Tomorrow at 1 p.m., we have Urban Wildlife with the Ohio Canada Center. So they'll be here at the NVMM. Friday at 12 p.m., the Columbus Zoo and Aquarium has their thing for animal ambassadors. And then at 1:30, we are doing What is a Service Dog by Black Paul Canine. On Saturday at noon, we have the Basic Dog Obedience Training Course by Malta Canine. And then, of course, every day from now till Saturday from 11 to 3, we have some tabling upstairs in our great hall with a multitude of vendors with some great products, great stories, and great organizations that you guys can be a part of or contribute to. And as well, we have some food trucks out in our parking lot here. For the complete schedule, please check us out online at nationalvmm.org and come down to take a look at this great event that we got going on all the way through Saturday. So thank you so much for joining us here for Pets and Vets. And thank you for your continued support.